Tropical storm Danny is still holding together and is causing some problems up the northeast coast at this hour. Hi, I'm Janetta Jones. We also have the details of the oppressive heat building in the lower Mississippi Valley and Central Plains. But first, let's go to Rich Johnson in the Forecast Center for the latest on Danny.
p.m. from the Hurricane Center. Let me show you what that looks like, and then we'll show you what the latest scenes out in Nantucket look like earlier today. Tropical storm Danny, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Center, 25 miles east of Nantucket. Really, it has slowed down today. Top sustained winds, 60 miles per hour earlier. Even looking back to yesterday, the winds were starting to pick up. The speed was really picking up, and for a while it looked like it was heading out to sea for a while, but it's decided to sit for a spell. Around Plymouth, Mass, down to Woods Hole, still tropical storm warnings are out, and we believe that the main threat is still going to be from rain. Earlier today, Mike Seidel and crew out at Chatham. In fact, later this evening, we will resume our live coverage of Danny from Chatham. And you can see some of the boats bobbing around just a little bit, but actually the conditions got worse later this afternoon as some of the winds gusted to over 50 miles per hour. So Chatham right on over to Nantucket. A windy day today and a very wet day, although there appears to be a little bit of a lull in between the bands over toward eastern Massachusetts.
The bands are a little farther apart than they were earlier, Rich, so you do get a bit of a lull in between each band now.
And I was looking at some of the totals, upwards of 4 inches of rain. We're in that lull now on the backside of this tropical storm. Are they going to see the rain increase again later tonight?
Well, yeah, it's going to be a little more spotty than it was. Since these bands are farther apart, there'll be more peaks and lulls. But also, Rich, I think we're beginning to see some evidence that's getting ready to move out and take that move toward the east-northeast. So I think we can be pretty optimistic about what it might look like tomorrow in Cape Cod.
John, of course, we have the weekend upon us here. A lot of people want to head down to the coast. What does it look like with this tropical storm?
I think it's going to be okay by tomorrow. I think that during the night tonight that we're going to see a more definite movement and get it on out to the northeast. And as soon as it does do that, you know, it's only raining over the extreme southeastern tip of Massachusetts, Cape Cod and the islands, and maybe a tiny bit of Rhode Island. Back to the west, just fine already.
Okay, let's take a look at our satellite photograph, and unfortunately starting to get dark here. The visible picture is very helpful in pinpointing the center of circulation. Let's zoom in and have a closer look at this.
Well, that's what happens every night, Rich. Of course, the sun goes down, the visible picture, then we can't see it. But anyway, the center is right near Nantucket, which is right here, and the Hurricane Center places it just a little bit east of the island. And again, the movement today has been more toward the north than it has to the east, but tonight we expect to resume a track off to the northeast. Okay,
with most of the weather off to the west of the center of circulation, let's look at our latest radar. You can see some of those bands. They appear to be heading across Buzzards Bay out toward Fall River, New Bedford. What can residents of southern Massachusetts into Rhode Island expect?
Well, each time we get one of these bands circulate around the circulation center, which is down in this neck of the woods, then you're going to get an increase in rain. Like here's a rain band here, a very intense rain in it. It's moving off to the southwest. We don't see quite so many coming in. As a matter of fact, the last couple hours here where Mike Seidel is on the tip of Cape Cod, they're just about rain-free and have been for maybe a couple of hours.
So again, with 4 inches out to around Nantucket, as this low pulls away eventually off to the northeast, these bands should wrap back in across eastern Massachusetts.
They will wrap back in until this gets on out of the way, but I think by later on tonight or tomorrow morning, they'll all be east of this area.
So again, biggest problem will be flooding, maybe 4 to 6 inches of rain, but then it should calm down. Really not that bad of a deal.
Right, it is a tropical storm, and it's not a very strong one at that, so 40, 50 miles an hour winds are about as strong as we've seen, and that won't do much damage, maybe a little superficial damage, and that's about it.
All right, thanks, John. John Hope, our tropical expert here at the Weather Channel. We'll keep you updated. Of course, as long as Danny's around, we'll be around. Now let's head back to the studio with Janetta. She has the latest on severe storms across the plains and your weekend forecast.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. We are going to be talking about the potential for strong thunderstorms tonight, maybe even tornadoes. Let's show you the maps and talk about where the potential for severe weather is going to be the greatest. In North Dakota, South Dakota, and parts of Colorado, brief small tornadoes have been reported by the public along I-76, and that is in Colorado's Sedgwick County. in Colorado. These have
in effect. There you can see it, Tropical Storm Danny as of 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, 40.6 north, 69.8.
Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is sponsored by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. Time for your tropical update, 50 past the hour or 10 till the hour. Every day you'll have the tropical update, at least through November. All right, Tropical Storm Danny, as you can see, what a track with this tropical storm now affecting the Cape. Winds are at 60 miles per hour and drifting south right now. And this is of the 8 o'clock update. It's about 45, the center of it is 45 miles south-southeast of Nantucket Island, Massachusetts. And we have tropical storm warnings in effect from Woods Hole to Plymouth, Mass. And we have Mike Seidel reporting at the top of the hour, so make sure you tune in for some video, or some live video. All right, looking at the satellite, we are seeing somewhat of the circulation here. Actually, we think what's left of Tropical Storm Danny is becoming extratropical. It's going through some changes, and it probably will continue to weaken here in the next 24 hours and actually should start to move off to the northeast. But what that means for the Cape, you might see another couple hours of winds gusting up to 40 and 45 miles per hour, plus the possibility of some light rain. And that's really dwindling down there right now, as you can see on our Doppler. It's really starting to wind down. We have had reports of power lines being down and also of some boats being damaged around Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So again, the tropical storm warnings include Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and also Cape Cod. All right, overall, though, that's about it for Tropical Storm Danny. Pretty quiet across much of the Caribbean and the eastern and western Atlantic. We have an upper-level trough here with providing some westerly winds, so we're going to hold off on any development here for the next couple of days. You do see some thunderstorms in Cuba, the Yucatan Peninsula, and also in Florida this evening. We had a tornado around Jacksonville earlier today. Even the Dominican Republic and Haiti, some thunderstorms, and again around Cuba. Northern parts of South America, a few showers in Venezuela. And then a couple of waves coming across. Again, not much happening here. With the westerly winds in the upper levels, we probably won't see too much development. And then again, we're getting closer to that Cape Verde season, and we do see the waves coming off of Africa. We will follow these as they go across the Atlantic, but we don't think any of them will develop into anything. And it's kind of quiet in the eastern Pacific. A few thunderstorms around the intertropical convergence zone, but nothing organized at this time. And looking at Hawaii, Good evening. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. We have a couple of stories tonight. One, of course, being Tropical Storm Danny. We'll talk about that in a second, but we do have some severe weather going on in the upper Midwest right now. We do have a tornado warning in effect for Dane and Jefferson County in Wisconsin. At 7:40, a tornado was reported on the ground just west of Waunakee, 9 miles northwest of Madison. No reports of damage have been received yet, but this will be affecting Waunakee and also northern portions of Madison, so please seek shelter immediately. All right, the other story tonight has got to be the heat. The heat is on in the nation's midsection. Temperatures will approach and in many cases break the century mark. We have all the details on the heat and also the severe weather coming up in the forecast in just a few minutes, but our lead story, believe it or not, is still Danny. For the details, we go to Sharon Resultant in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Kim. Danny indeed is still the lead story, and we're going to start you out first introducing Stu Ostro, our senior meteorologist and our meteorology supervisor, and you're going to tell us a little bit about some of the interesting things we've seen with Danny yet again today.
Yes, one more curveball which Danny threw us, which was to transform itself from a tropical system to almost more of a non-tropical system, and in doing so slow down. It's been wobbling around this evening. That slower motion, even the stalling out or wobbling around, would be of more concern to us if it were a hurricane, first of all, or if it were strengthening, but we really think the storm is beginning to wind down as well as slow down.
Let's show folks the very latest here as we look at the latest statistics, and there are the coordinates in case you're plotting at home. As of 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, 45 miles south-southeast of Nantucket Island, Massachusetts. Sustained winds still up there around 60 miles per hour. It's drifting south now, and the central pressure at 994 millibars. So it has been a very interesting day with Danny, and we are still looking at some very gusty winds. You can see the tropical storm warnings from Plymouth, Massachusetts to Woods Hole, Massachusetts.
That's right, and tropical storm warnings refer to winds of 39 miles per hour or higher.
And that's exactly what we were finding here in some of this video. You can see some of the flags on the ships and a lot of those trees whipping about. You're looking at scenes from Chatham, Massachusetts. The waves are up across this region, a little bit of chop to the water, and a good stiff wind blowing the flag there. We have had some reports of some significant rain across that region as well. A lot of that rain kind of coming to an end for now. Maybe not completely ending. Looks like it's at least drizzly there where Mike Seidel is in Chatham. Mike?
Yeah, Sharon, it is still raining lightly, being whipped by this strong wind from the north and northwest, which is a little bit different than we had most of the day, which was east to northeast wind, then around to the north later on this afternoon. We're still getting some pretty good gusts. We had our peak wind gust this afternoon, 48 miles an hour. Plenty of heavy rain squalls wrapping around Danny and bringing us certainly 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. That's been the average on the Cape. And tonight, as we scan out towards the water, some of the same boats you may have seen in the video, and you can see they're not really bouncing up and down very much. We're protected here in the Bay Area. We're not being directly impacted by the Atlantic. That's beyond us, beyond the beachhead, and out there a couple of miles out in the dark distance. Sharon, Stu?
All right, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about any damage reports that you have had there or any power outages nearby?
We've been listening to the radio all day, talking to people here. We've heard of no power outages. The only damage we've seen, as I mentioned, just a couple of limbs down. I saw a screen off one of the cottages here, a couple of trash cans blown around. Typical items you would see occurring with winds gusting to 40 or 45 miles an hour, but certainly nothing more than a nor'easter. In fact, maybe not even quite a typical New England nor'easter here in Chatham tonight.
Just a blustery day in Chatham, no doubt about
exactly.
that. Thanks a lot, Mike. We'll check back with you in 1 hour. Stu,
okay.
Let's talk a little bit more about this, and we got an interesting satellite to show folks too. This goes back a ways, and it also tells a story about the movement. We had alluded to how fast it was moving earlier on, and certainly showed some signs of slowing down. What's been happening throughout the day?
Well, we saw it come off the coast here, moving very rapidly last evening. Then the winds aloft formed, at the time it was what we call a broad trough in the upper atmosphere. That trough sharpened up, and actually I think what happened today is an upper level low pressure system pretty much on top of it captured the center circulation. It's been wobbling around a little bit. We think it might be doing a little bit of a loop, but at long last we hope and we do think it is beginning to make its exit.
Yeah, folks, look really closely there at the last couple of images on that loop. You can see a definite kind of an eastward trend there, so that is certainly some good news. Exactly what we want to see. And we alluded to the fact that the rain has been lightening up across this region, so that's some good news as well. The heaviest stuff has really remained offshore.
See that taper off except for this one band in here, and actually in the last, say, 15 minutes to half an hour, even that rain band is starting to disintegrate, so we really are not looking at a whole lot of additional rainfall along the coast, we don't think.
Generally amounts up to what, about 2 inches on some of the islands and some of the coastal areas?
Right, that's what we've seen so far. This is a Doppler radar rainfall estimate with an inch or two, and it might be underestimating a little bit here, but generally 1 to 3 inches, but we think that is really winding down now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stu Ostro, our meteorology supervisor. And again, we're going to toss it back to astronomically high. I mean, we're talking about some areas with dew points in the 80s.
That's right. In terms of dew points, 50s is pretty comfortable, 60s getting a little bit more humid. Anything above 70 you can really feel really gets oppressive, and we've seen dew points here in the mid-70s, even a couple of spots above 80 during the day and on into the evening.
Okay, so that's helping to fuel the fire for some out there has been Tropical Storm Danny, and boy, it's been a problem for the past week or so.
So we'll talk about Tropical Storm Danny. In case you missed it, it's kind of a second time around for Tropical Storm Danny. Not uncommon early in the season, especially, that we see some tropical development that moves from land out over water and then kind of reforms, take on some tropical characteristics, becomes a tropical system. That's not uncommon. It happens often. Like I said, in June and July. It can happen other times too, but some of the more common, prevalent times during tropical season are those 2 months. Of course, 2 weeks ago Sunday, we were talking about some rain that was into sections of Louisiana. Then what happened? It kind of drifted out over some water, took on tropical characteristics, came back in last weekend as a hurricane, Hurricane Danny. And it kind of held onto its center of circulation and wiggled across Georgia and the Carolinas, dumping lots of rain, especially like around Charlotte, North Carolina, and also Raleigh, Durham area had a lot of wet weather too. Then it pushed out and became a tropical storm again, so Tropical Storm Danny maintained its circulation, so it also kept its name. It was always identifiable, so as it moved on, it became Tropical Storm Danny. And that's one of the things, I had a lot of people ask that question. It was called Danny there and Danny here both. Well, yeah, it was the same system, held that characteristic. It always see the circulation, so it did maintain the same name because it was always the same area of circulation that was being watched. Current position, 95 miles east-southeast of Nantucket Island. Winds sustained around 60 miles per hour. Still moving to the east, or moving now to the east, rather, about 18 miles per hour. A pressure at 994 millibars, or 29.35 inches of mercury. Expect Tropical Storm Danny to keep on moving, and it's kind of being wrapped up with a system, a surface system moving out. It's going to kind of lift it onward, and hopefully we'll get it kind of kicked out and away from land. That seems to be happening now. It's weakening rapidly. It wouldn't surprise me next 6 to 12 hours. I think some of the expectations are it could be declared what's called an extratropical system. Kind of a misnomer. Extratropical sounds like super tropical, but extratropical actually means that they're no longer a tropical system. It is out of tropical parameters and in just kind of with a big old batch of rain. Again, as things continue to kick off the coast, it's probably the way it's headed. We'll have updates for you on Danny about any kind of further downgrade that could happen. Still could see some very strong winds, and we do have a tropical storm, so tropical storm warnings are in effect. Mostly wind now from Woods Hole, Mass. on to Chatham. Again, that's kind of give you an idea of the proximity to the coast of Tropical Storm Danny. Again, now moving east, so that's the good part of that forecast. Looking at the satellite vantage point now, this is enhanced, showing the colder cloud tops as some of the richer colors you see on the screen. Blue represents some moisture, a lot of the heavier rain convection right in there. But as things continue to push away from the shore, that's the good news. What's left of the tropical storm apparently has been kind of drifting at times kind of south, and that's it right there. Now this is something altogether different. This batch of moisture is just a batch of rain that moved off, but you can see again that's where some of the heavier rains are. Still we saw a lot of heavy rain from this system, now out over the water. But again, look right there, it had a southward drift, now kind of moving east, and that is Danny getting out of the way. Showers moving on too. A lot of this just like fake radar echoes. Some sprinkles still possible in this area, especially out around Nantucket toward the Cape there. You're probably dealing with a little bit in the way of some rain, but most of the heavier rains appear to have pushed out to sea, and that's a good riddance. You can still see kind of the movement here, counterclockwise flow indicating low pressure. That's what a tropical system is. Moving on again, going the right direction. Another vantage point, again, that's about where it lies right now. There's the biggest batch of moisture that did affect the Northeast, dropping all that rain in New York City around Central Park. A new record set, about 3 3/4 of an inch that fell yesterday. That's that batch of rain there. That's where all the convection showers I was showing you moments ago happens to be moving on. Dropping a little further south, not much happening. There's an upper level low, but it's not of a true tropical nature in parts of even the